Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Detections, not featuring BSD. Otherwise, he would be doing introductions because he gets everybody so hyped up. But with your hosts, Understudy 77 and...
Exile the Trades.
Nice. Tonight should be fun. And tonight's...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, tonight's really interesting because, one, I'm excited about the guest. Two, I leave for a trip tomorrow. Three, I spent most of this week, training, taking, a SOC leadership course from SANS. Actually, the second SANS course I ever took and the only one I've ever paid attention to.
Wait, are you starting to get edumacated now?
No, I would not at all say I'm starting to get edumacated. That's not a thing. But it was John Hubbard, right? I'll happily take one of John's classes. We had him on the show 2 weeks ago. He's great. Wonderful, wonderful person. Really good class. Genuinely, I really enjoyed that class. I thought there was a lot of cool tips and tricks. For anybody who's moving into their first time, building a SOC or being a manager in that type of environment, strongly recommend it. If you're, I will say, maybe I didn't get as much as a brand new person would get because I've been doing this for quite a while, but I still got enough to make it valuable and worth it. And it's only a 2-day class.
Excellent.
But for anybody who's interested in that line and interested in building a SOC and interested in leading a SOC and retention and all those fun things that come with being a manager, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot tonight. That class is really good. So it's a good primer, but Exile, I'll hand it to you now.
Yeah, you're just all prepped up for our conversation with our guest and leadership in the security technology space.
It's a good entry point.
Yeah, I don't have anything real exciting to talk about. I don't have a trip. I didn't just take training. I've been head down at work, and as the state that I live in goes back into yet another lockdown.
Fraud. Calling fraud right now. Fraud.
Got to do it in all caps, though. It has to be all caps or it's not legit.
So, yeah, sorry. I can't help myself with that still. That's probably going to be around for a little while.
It's going to become the meme of 2021.
Probably true.
Yeah, just back to being, trying to be a responsible human and citizen of staying indoors and limiting exposure.
So should we introduce our guest?
Yes.
Take it away.
I can do that. So we have her Twitter handle is Lady SecItUp. I had a chance to meet and get to know her a little bit through a mutual workspace and share some stuff about pictures that I took when I was out doing the protests and hit it off, and then found out about the long and interesting past she had, so we had to have her on the show.
You make
Welcome.
me sound old. Long?
Well, it's kind of cold-blooded. Don't make somebody sound old. I'm married. I know better.
You're a smart man.
Sorry, I gotta mute.
It took me many years to get to that point. But
She trained you.
exactly. Isn't that how it works?
Remember, I just have a cat.
Oh,
True.
right. Yes.
So while he answers the phone call, why don't you tell us about yourself? We like to kind of reference this as the why are you here part. But tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jessica, also known as Lady SecItUp on Twitter. I've been doing security for more than 20 years now. So I guess you could say a long path to getting here. I started back in the days when IDS was a bleeding edge technology. There was no such thing as a SIM. We kind of dreamed that one day we would have a log aggregator that we could at least dump our logs into one place so that when we downloaded them to our Excel sheets, we would have all the logs in one place.
And then you saw what the industry did with the concept and how horribly it's executed everywhere, and immediately regretted that hope.
Yes.
Wait, we're still not supposed to be downloading stuff to Excel spreadsheets?
It's really amusing. And all the time that I was in IR, we had all these advanced tools, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what we ended up using the most was a script that pulled off what we needed and dumped to Excel.
Yeah. One of the very first classes I took at this new job that I started at in June was advanced analysis for Excel. Like it is, I still use it all the time, every day. I love pivot
Oh, I
tables,
believe
and
it.
lookups, and all of that crazy stuff. And it's powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway,
but
continue.
yeah, so we did have, huge dreams one day of not just having to rely on Excel all the time. And from there, when I first started out, when a person did security, they did a little bit of everything. So I did pen testing, I was involved with PKI, I did forensics, I did incident response, like all of those things. But it wasn't like a well-formed kind of concept of like security operations yet, for example. And that's kind of evolved over the course of my career, and I've been really lucky to be part of that evolution. And I most often end up in security operations, blue team type roles. I've taken little dalliances, over to like risk management, and I owned IAM for like 2 months before I said, no, do not want, give to someone else, please.
I just want to call out that I really love the usage of the word dalliances. It's not a word you hear very often, and like major respect for the embroadened word usage there.
Thank you. See, my husband makes fun of me for the words I use, and I'm like, "Are you making fun of me for being smart? Like, what's going on here?"
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Genuinely, like we don't have enough people who use rare words.
If we can work in,
awesome.
if we can work in defenestrate at some point, we will have like nailed it tonight.
I mean, as long as we don't try to do some herebys to claim states, I think.
No, and no shells, no herebys, and no shells.
Fair.
But my all-time favorite word is serendipitous.
Serendipitous is a good word.
Yeah, it's fun to say, and it has that like whimsy about it and that kind of thing. I really like serendipitous.
Yeah. The problem is every time this conversation comes up, this thing pops into my mind that goes, you know what? Like I know big words. I should use big words. And then I think like, what big words do I know? And the only one that ever comes to mind is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's it. The only one.
What about that Dairy Queen commercial from years ago where the little boy is learning to talk, and the parents he's like a toddler, and the parents get him to say anti-disestablishmentarianism.
Right? The other one that always hangs with me is loquacious because of Harry Potter.
Oh,
For no
yes.
other reason than because of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But loquacious always hangs with me as well. And you have the emotional range of a teaspoon. That one works too. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so, I took a couple side detours into, non-blue team type things. But, I'm always drawn back to the detecting what's bad and going on and how to prevent it in the future and recovering from it and, the adrenaline rush from doing an incident and all those kinds of things. But as I've kind of, grown up more, I've sought out and been put in leadership roles where I'm leading those teams now, and I'm helping to define, the security operations program and how to make them more mature and make sure that the things that they're doing not only are, mature so they're repeatable and they're documented and, all of those, good CMMI things, but also that they matter, because there's a lot of places that do things where it's like, okay, that's great that you do that and you do it the same way and you can report on it, but
Squirrel.
why
Squirrel.
are you doing that?
Squirrel. What? Squirrel?
And so I really love, being part of like the program building and that kind of stuff now. And I truly enjoy being a leader, and, I'll take a brief hiatus every once in a while from, leadership role and go back to being an individual contributor. And, that's really nice for a while, but then I start, getting itchy, and inevitably I'm, put in more and more leadership positions and put in, positions of having more responsibilities, and then I get a title and, I'm a people leader all of a sudden again. So,
One of the things that I find really interesting about that, and this is just something I'd love to get your take on as we go through this. One of the concepts and one of the reasons why I went into leadership was very much for the same reason, that program building, that ability to have a greater impact than what I had yesterday. And in that sense, one of the things that I've come to that I think is really interesting is that we have done as an industry, and it's probably not at all unique to this industry, individual contributor is a huge disservice, because if you have to go be a people leader in order to have the level of impact that you want, maybe we're not doing it right. Maybe,
I agree that I really like the places that I've been that have had kind of discrete paths, right? So I think when you start forcing very smart technical people to be people leaders when they don't want to be, you're creating a recipe for disaster, and you're going to very quickly have a team that's demoralized, and maybe they were working really well together, they gelled, they had each other's back, and then you get a terrible leader, and not because they're a terrible person, but because they're in the wrong role. And so you start getting dissension, and they don't know how to lead people, or they're not good at it, and
oh yeah,
it's not something they don't want to do. I mean, think about anytime you have to do something that you don't really want to do. You're not great at it generally. And so it starts creating problems within the team dynamics, and then that quickly spreads, and it is very hard to change that trajectory once it's started.
oh yeah, and I want to talk about that more in depth because I think we should. But before that, I think one of the other problems is we almost, if someone wants to have more ability to change something or more impact in their organization, we not only put them in that role, we basically force them and leave that as their only choice, because for whatever reason, we as an industry often don't respect the opinions or trust the individual contributor to make corporate-wide change. That was the thing that I wanted to talk about first.
So I think, I got myself off track on my, my
No
prior
worries, no
commentary.
Welcome to detections. We do that.
Yeah, this happens all the time.
But what I was going to say was I have found organizations that kind of have a dual path where you can become a technical leader and remain an individual contributor, or if you truly have the desire to be a people leader, you can also be a people leader, but you can still continue to move up in your career, get better titles if that's important to you, get more pay if that's important to you, and get more of that recognition and that, gravitas, I guess, to have the, influence within the organization. But when you start forcing folks down this one path to, continued quote unquote success, because that's what, the American dream of, success looks like, is you become a people leader and eventually you're, the all evil CEO. I think
I would like to be that someday.
I think that when we give folks other paths for continued growth and influence in a technical role without forcing them to be people leaders, that you actually get a lot better results.
Oh yeah, and I think it's nice that we're finally starting to get to that point. But I feel like it took a long time for people to kind of understand that that's a thing, and it's still not a lot of organizations that do that.
Yeah.
Or give people, monetary options. Like, honestly, like, I'm not one of those people who's ever going to pretend that money shouldn't matter to everybody, because it absolutely should. Should it be the only thing you care about? No, but like, you should care about money. Like, you get paid to do a job.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty important to making sure you have the lifestyle that you would like to have, right? I mean, to have a home and to have food on your table and clothing and, maybe something extra to, have a nice vacation or get that book you want or that kind of thing. I mean,
send your kid to way too expensive of a private school because this is infosec.
Summer camp.
Right.
So I was thinking with what we were just talking about is how much of the understanding comes from people in the industry versus, say, like senior leadership not understanding the differences between how people in infosec versus like traditional IT or engineers or developers operate.
But you know what? I think it's a problem in those other traditional technical fields as well. I think we have to start looking outside of so I'm a big proponent of interdisciplinary studies and taking ideas and concepts from other things that may seem like they're not related and seeing how you can apply them, in this other situation. And so I think this is probably a solved problem, and that one thing that we're really good at in technology and information security is solving problems again and again, even though they've already been solved, because we can do it better.
But like, I have 15 wheels that I can sell you over here.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, you're really right on that, because I would say that, like, for the most part, like, being a manager in infosec or being a leader in infosec is very different than the traditional definition of a leader, in which I'm talking about like manufacturing type roles and things of that nature. But the parallels across the entire technology industry are there. So I wouldn't say that being an infosec leader is special, but being a technology leader is different than being a more traditional leader. And maybe we don't borrow enough from technology. Somebody was just, this just came up in the leadership class that I took. They were talking about like CVSS scores and how, we've developed our own unique way to do this CVSS scoring. But like, anybody who does risk-based scoring in literally any other industry has looked at it and said, like, that's a horrible way to do that, and it means nothing. So like, genuinely a really interesting kind of thing of us
know better.
rewriting the wheel.
We are smarter. We know everything. What do you mean? You're wrong.
Right? Actually, and we'll link this. There's a B-Side San Francisco talk called "Fix What Matters: Why CVSS Sucks and How to Do Better."
Oh, that's amazing. I need to check that out.
So I have the slide share up, and we'll put it in the description. I'll see if I can find a link to the talk, but I at least have the slide share. And this was, we actually talked about this in the leadership class about how we have to reinvent the wheel. And oftentimes when we do it, it's just not as good.
It's terrible. And we do it all the time.
Consistently, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because we're the smartest people ever.
Always the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, the infosec ego problem is a whole nother topic that we can dive into if you want to.
And we did start to kind of talk about it in one of our very early episodes.
Rockstars, ninjas, and everything in between.
Yes.
I remember the name of that episode. Yeah, we did a whole
on the
episode.
tip of your tongue, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did a whole episode on the rockstar problem.
Yeah.
And the damage that those individuals can do to an organization, like, and how the most technical person, if they don't have the right attitude, can often hurt your business more than help it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look at the dumpster fire of Twitter infosec.
I mean, you're not wrong there.
Come on.
Yeah, then that rockstar, isn't that go to even undermining, like, say you have a good leader in position and you get that one toxic rockstar in place. What does that do for the leadership side? Like, how much more difficult does it make the job?
Yeah. So I worked at a financial institution that shall remain nameless, and I had a team of folks that thought they were all rock stars and giant egos. And one of the things that they felt really good about is when they could make someone cry in an interview for like an entry level SOC position.
Fuck?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like they took major and I'm like, what are you doing?
I've been at those places, and like I'm totally gonna soapbox for a second here, because I've done this before. Like in infosec, for some fucking reason, we have this concept that, like, because it's a stressful job, specifically in the IR and operations side, like the interview has to be stressful. I'm gonna say this for probably the 50th time. No, it fucking doesn't, because interview stress when you don't have a job and you're looking for a job is very, very fucking different than working in incident kind of stress when you have personal security. Personal security
Absolutely.
Versus no personal security. There's a big difference. If you want somebody's best, make them fucking comfortable in the interview process, please.
Well, and the other thing is, can we just talk about how I don't care how many ports you have memorized, because you will have access to Google probably 99% of the time. I want to know how you think and how you learn, and that you're open to learning.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and that you're not a complete fucking asshole, right?
Yep.
Because I can't teach you how to be a good human and a nice person, but I can teach you tech.
All my
You know?
all my questions are scenario based, but I shit you not, I had this conversation with somebody. Somebody was talking about ports and having to know your ports. I'm like, well, you were on my interview panel. Like when I interviewed, and this was a while back. When I interviewed, I brought a list of ports printed out in my folder, and I said, "Hey, I have this list. Can I pull it out? Like I'm not good at port memorization." And they were like, "No, you can't." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Do I get bonus points for having it?" And the conversation continues, and the individual's like, "I'm sorry, if you don't know your ports, like Walmart or McDonald's is hiring or some shit." And I was like, "That's a really bad way to hire
fuck?
somebody." Like sheer
Terrible.
memorization does not make a good analyst.
Right.
No.
Right. Show me you know how to think and that you know how to pick apart a problem. And I may give you a complicated scenario
Mhm.
and you may not get to the answer that I was expecting. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. And it also shows me how you think. And if that's someone I can work with, like I can see that you're thinking about the problem and, you know, where you might have, you know, taken a detour from the path I might have gone on, which does not mean it's the only right path, you know, and you're not a complete douchebag. Like, I want to hire you on my team.
Oh yeah.
You
Oddly
know?
enough, my favorite interviews are the ones where I give someone a scenario and they go down a completely different path than me. Because that means when we're in a working environment, they're going to go down a completely different path than me
Yep.
too. And we have some diversity of thought and there's some real
Yes.
benefit to that.
Yes.
And the other thing that I think people forget is when you know, as the interviewer coming to the situation, if you treat these people, you know, rather than like a piece of shit, like another human being sitting across the table dealing with the interview stress, and give them stuff to research and continue, the ones that do that generally come back later better after 2 or 3
Yes.
months or 4 months than they were at the
Yes.
time. It's just timing was wrong.
Yes.
That's it.
And that happens all the time. So is it worth talking to? Because, and I really like, we didn't actually talk about this, but with Diana, is Diana Initiative stuff on the table?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not still officially, you know,
That's fine.
with
but
them, but I can definitely talk about, you know, the stuff from when I
Cool.
was
So
the COO and, you know,
not
they're a great
specifically
organization.
Diana Initiative related,
Okay.
but I want to talk a little bit about like the importance of diversity of thought and diversity in
Yes.
general in infosec roles.
Yes.
And you know, that's something we didn't actually really discuss pre-show, but I do think that that's a really interesting topic. So I'd love to
It
get your
is
thoughts
like
there.
Yeah.
my soapbox.
Well, soapbox away. This is a safe space for that.
Awesome. So, oh my God, I have so many thoughts on this. So, I think that the underrepresentation of non-cis het white males is atrocious within infosec. I think it's getting better in some spaces. My current organization, for example, there are so many. I've never worked with so many women over the course of my 20 plus year career, and you know, many places that I've worked, and it's amazing, and I love it. You know, that we have a lot of women in leadership positions, and I just think it's great. And so I do think, you know, that's improving. But when you look around, you know, there's not a lot of people of color.
Now it feels like we have very few specifically black people in the field.
Yes. Yes. And if you don't know, do you know who Kristen Breger is? Or Kirsten Breger?
That name sounds vaguely familiar.
I do not.
So she's amazing. She is in the Texas area, and she, so we had her on doing, in 2018, she did one of the keynotes for Diana Initiative.
Oh yeah, I totally
On
read some of her blogs. I just
yeah,
looked her up.
on securing that bag.
Yep.
And she is such an advocate for Black women, and, you know, getting your worth and making sure that your voice is heard, and, you know, all of those things. And she is amazing and does such a fantastic job. If you don't follow her on Twitter, you should. She's amazing.
She's the one who did the series, the salary negotiation tips from white men?
Probably.
It is. I just looked.
Yeah.
I just saw it. Like that was a really good series and something that I think is really interesting and a cool way to reach out, because like I'm not going to sit here and pretend as a like straight cis white dude that I don't want to provide the advice and things that I have learned, but I also don't want it to come off the wrong way, right?
Right. And it can sometimes, right? I mean, you can have the best of intentions, but, again, you happen to be in that demographic, and so may not come off the best, right? It can come off as mansplaining, or, the white dude
Exactly.
telling you how you should do things, let me help you out, that kind of thing. And
So, like, straight up, I'm going to ask for advice as we continue on this topic.
Sure.
Like, if I want to help underrepresented populations in InfoSec, how can I do that without coming off the wrong way?
So one thing you can do, and so this really helps, like in your place of work, or if you're at a meetup, like an InfoSec meetup or something like that, women, people of color, other underrepresented groups, like LGBTQ, they often will try and speak up, and then some dude will talk right over them, right? Like they weren't even talking. And so one thing you can do in those kinds of situations and say, "Excuse me, I believe Samantha was speaking. Let's hear what she has to say." And move the focus back over to that person. The other thing that happens to those groups of people are they'll bring up an idea in a meeting, or whatever, and it's met with maybe lukewarm. I've had this happen to me multiple times, actually, and it's infuriating. You bring up an idea, you guys are talking about something, you bring up an idea to like a solution or how to approach something. It's met with, kind of lukewarm, lukewarm response.
Sure.
And then, then the conversation will move on, and,
some
maybe
guy will
2
say the
minutes later,
same thing.
almost verbatim. And then everyone is suddenly like, "Yes, that
Yep.
is a fantastic idea. Why
That
hasn't
shit
anyone said this before?"
Pisses me off so
Right?
much.
So in those situations, you can speak up and say, "Hey, Rebecca just said that."
I like how you're bringing names to humanize as well. That's a really nice touch.
Thank you. So you can say, "You know what? That's exactly what Rebecca just said. That is a great idea. Let's talk about that more." And so it's redirecting focus back on those underrepresented people. And it's not like you're coming in as the chivalrous white knight or whatever. Like, you're actively putting the focus back on those people that should be getting the focus because
Sure.
they did speak up or they were talked over, that kind of thing.
So speaking of that, and
Yes.
Exiled, I apologize because I haven't actually talked to you about this yet, but we're going to talk about this now anyway. One of the things that I've been very interested in and kind of tossing around my head lately is I've really liked all the Share the Mic and Cyber stuff that's been
Yes.
And
Yes.
I really want to.
Whenever Tara Wheeler puts, that I follow her on Twitter and I have notifications turned on for her because I love it when she does that. It's amazing.
I'm going to throw this out here and we're just going to do it. Sorry again, Exiled and BSD, if you listen to this.
No, hold on. Just before you do that, I just want to say, like, if it hasn't been noticed, I've been very intentional about trying to increase diversity for our guests.
Oh yeah.
So
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to do is I want to invite, and if anybody listens, or Jess, if you know anybody, I would like to invite 2 underrepresented people to come and host an episode. They can pick the guest, they can pick the topic. Exiled and I will say literally nothing. The episode will entirely be them. It will be their episode. But if you know anybody who would like to do it, or if anybody listening knows anybody who would like to do it, I would love to open up an entire episode of Detections to be run by 2 people from an underrepresented group and do a Share the Mic and Cyber event for the podcast.
That is amazing. And I will definitely tweet about that. And I do know folks that would probably be interested in that. So I love
awesome.
it. I love it.
I would love to do that. I've been thinking about it like for the last 2 weeks, and I was going to talk to you about it at some point, Exile.
Surprise!
It just hasn't come up yet. But since we're on the topic, like,
so now my choice is to go along with it and be the good guy and be like, "No, fuck you," and come across as an asshole.
Bigot.
On the upside, it's not like I didn't know that like you and BSD wouldn't be for it.
Exactly.
Like I knew you'd be for it. I just hadn't brought it up.
It's a safe risk, right?
Well, we have had the conversation off air about how do we increase diversity with our guests.
Oh yeah. and hosts and everything as
Yeah.
well. Like all that stuff is really like I'm very interested in that, and it's very important to me.
Well, and if it isn't obvious, it's important to me the fact that I was going out to the protest to support people that are underrepresented. Like,
and one of the things that I'm always kind of trying to figure out, and Jess, this is why I'm so glad that you're here to talk about, is, you know, I have a skill set that I've learned. Like, I'm good at negotiating. I'm good at this stuff. And I would like to be able to teach that stuff, but I would like to be able to teach it in the right way. Like, I want to be an ally. And oftentimes, you know, I don't think it's harmful for me to ask how I can be a better one, right?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the best way to do it rather than making assumptions, right? I mean, the other thing is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? You probably will make a misstep. You know, like, I don't know if this is a great metaphor, but you know, I have friends that, you know, are transgender, and I've been known to accidentally misgender them when talking. And, you know, I apologize and we move on. But, you know, that feels very uncomfortable. But I just have to own that, you know what, I might make a mistake sometimes. I'm still learning. I'm still learning this as well. And I'm still learning how to navigate, you know, gender and all of that kind of stuff. And so, you know, I might screw it up. And if you go out of your way to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and like you make it into like this much larger deal, it actually makes it worse, and it's very cringy, right? Like, apologize, learn from it, move on, do better next time.
I'm great. I'm glad you brought that up because I can speak from personal experience on that. So my nephew came out as trans, and I had that exact conversation with him. Like right at the beginning, he's like, realize like I saw you as a baby before you had the understanding of, you know, where your identity was.
Yeah.
So just realize that when I screw up, it simply is just a thing of the brain with the memory. And I ask for your forgiveness now for when I fuck it up, and just call me out on it and we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I can't speak for that community. But I think it's similar when you're trying to be an ally, you know, in general to underrepresented groups. Like, you might fuck it up. I mean, absolutely. And if you don't,
we're still human. We're going to fuck it up at some point.
Right. And if you don't fuck it up, you're probably not doing enough, right? I mean, it's probably, you know, and this isn't everybody's thing, you know, like if I mean, I'm not saying it's okay not to be an ally, but not everybody is going to be as comfortable going as far with it, right? Like, you need to go to, you know, don't push yourself beyond your comfort level that it's going to make you have like a mental break or something like that, right? But you should understand that you're going to fuck it up. And if you do, just acknowledge it and do better next time, you know? Apologize. Apologies go a long way. As long as they're sincere and not just lip service and be like, oh, this is how I get out of trouble. Like my kids do.
Wait, so you mean like a fraud apology? Fraud apology.
Yes, no fraudulent apologies.
You know, so it's interesting because I will absolutely admit, like a couple of years ago, like my opinions were not anywhere near as where they are today, right? Like in life, things change.
That's cool. You've grown. That's awesome.
I'm not going to forgive myself for past opinions, but like I will move on. You know, you have a daughter and then you look at the world differently. And then like leadership was a big part of it for me because, and this kind of brings us back into what we were talking about originally, that concept of like a diversity of thought within a team and how valuable that is. So like, I'd like to loop back into that topic.
Sure.
Because I think it's such an interesting topic. And one that oftentimes, like when you interview specifically, like it's very easy to get along with the person who thinks like you. You know, we talked about like, even like how you kind of, some people really want people to get to the same conclusion the same way, when what they should be looking for is somebody who thinks differently about the topic.
It's going to challenge. Yep.
Yeah.
And that actually goes back to, I don't know, pick your philosophy, pick your theology. You can go across the entirety of human history. And anytime they talk about wisdom, they talk about having your counsel, those people, that diversity of thought, not just be filled with yes men or people that only respond with what you already believe.
Yeah, it's not great to lose and then have a room full of people who won't honestly tell you that you'll lose because they're afraid.
What
and
are you talking about?
then you do fire the ones that tell you.
That happens.
I mean, not that I know of, but like, you know. But it is genuinely really interesting. So like from your experience and leadership experience, any tips? Because like everybody has bias and like there's no way you're going to get rid of that, right? Like unconscious bias exists.
Yep.
If you can make it conscious bias, that's better.
Yep.
Because at least you know it exists and you don't judge yourself based on those
and
those
you can
decisions.
work against it, right? Actually.
Exactly. You can fight your bias and think
Yep.
critically through a situation, which we as humans totally have the power to do. Most of us. But like from the 20 years of experience in the field, from all the leadership that you've done, like how would you approach or what pieces of advice would you give people from the perspective of how do they change their mindset so they're looking for diversity rather than looking for what's comfortable?
So that's a really good question. I think part of it comes from having a diverse candidate pool to start with, right? So if
The next question is going to be how you get that, by the way.
Well, I have some ideas. They're not perfect, and it is a very hard problem to solve, believe me, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't work on it and try and do better every time, right?
I agree.
So first is I think we need to have a diverse candidate pool, and there's a couple ways that we can do that, right? So one is, people talk about the pipeline, and I used to be a very staunch, like, yes, it's totally a pipeline problem. We got to get those girls and people of color early, like in middle school, and get them into infosec, and that will solve our problem.
So the problem with that, and I'm gonna just throw this out here, and hopefully my wife doesn't get mad at me for this. My wife is currently enrolled in school for infosec. She just started. She's in like basic networking classes. She answered a question wrong. A student in her class said, aren't you supposed to be an infosec? And the teacher did nothing.
So that's why I was just about to pivot.
I hate that teacher even more.
Demoralizing.
Yes, you just gave an example of what I was about to say, why I am not it's just a pipeline problem anymore. Like, that's great. We can get all of the underrepresented people in infosec that you want, but then they're treated like shit once they are there. And so we can't keep them.
Yeah, and that feels like a much harder problem to fix.
It is. And I myself have thought about leaving infosec a couple of times because of my experiences. And so I think that we lose really good people as well because of the infosec player hater club, right? Where we just treat others not well. I think like in an aggregate, we're very like, oh, we're welcoming and we're open and all the tattoos and whatever, like, dude, we love everyone. But then when you get into like your company, right? It's generally not like that.
Well, and one of the biggest problems that we have is the aggregate. Like what we talk about when we speak of the community is like 1% of total infosec.
Right.
So like our
vocal, right?
Yeah, our aggregate is such a tiny portion of the industry as a whole.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. So I mean, there's the people that are the conference groupies, and there's the infosec Twitter, which there's a lot of crossover on that Venn diagram, and I'm not saying that like to say that's a bad thing. I love going to conferences. I'm all over Twitter. Like I am one of those people. Raising my hand, pointing at myself.
Same.
But that's a really good point. That there are so many people that don't fall into those circles. That I'm not saying all of them. I want to be careful on, what I'm saying here is not everyone that isn't part of those circles, and even some people that are in those circles can treat others very poorly and make the experience of being in infosec just fucking terrible. And I think that we lose good people because we're pushing them out. So like, yeah, we're building a pipeline and we're getting people into infosec, but then they're just treated terribly.
So what I'm hearing ultimately at the end of the day is that this is a leadership problem, since leaders set the tone for the teams and the organizations.
Yes. And I would also say not just infosec leadership, right? But leadership in general across corporations. I mean, I So twice in my career, I have gone to HR about being discriminated against or not given opportunities, and it was blatantly because I was a woman. Very hostile work environment in one case, and inevitably within 3 months at both of those places, I was fired, and I will never go to HR again.
See, and that's not where somebody should be. Like,
Right.
that's not where somebody should ever be. And that in and of itself is a whole other, like, that's a corporate problem, right? Like, that's not even like a leadership problem directly. Like, that's a corporate culture problem.
Right.
I mean, basically what we're getting to is that there's a lot of problems, and like, I don't know that there's a lot of answers.
I think it's like how you eat an elephant, right? You just every day you just take a bite and you just chip away at it, and if enough people are chipping away at it a little bit every day, there starts to be change. Where the problem comes is that the people that are being negatively impacted and those underrepresented groups are also being asked to do the heavy lifting and the labor of making it better. And so that also then has this vicious cycle of them then not being treated well because they're stirring the pot and they're agitating and they're pushing against the status quo, right?
And then we reach another form of a popular word right now, and that's burnout.
Yes.
They get burned out with that process.
Yes.
Which we've seen, like with the political stuff around equity and equality, that there's people who are saying, like, I'm just tired of talking to white people and explaining the situation.
Yes. And so when I was at Diana Initiative, one of the things that I really pushed for is that I didn't want to have a lot of talks that talked about the experience of being a woman in InfoSec or the experience of being a Black person in InfoSec. Like, inevitably, when a woman or a Black person or, LGBT, name your underrepresented group, is asked to speak at a conference or for an interview, there is almost always a question or a line of questions around what's the experience, what's it like to be a woman in InfoSec? What's it like to be a Black person in InfoSec? And it's fucking exhausting, to be honest with you. I am so tired of talking about the experience that I have of being a woman in InfoSec. I want to talk about the awesome things I've done. Like, I've done some really cool things in my career, and a lot of people have. And so with Diana Initiative in 2018, I was very much like, I don't want to have all of these talks be about the experience of being this person or that person in InfoSec. I want to talk about the awesome research they're doing and the new techniques that they've come up with, and what they're researching today and where they see the industry going, and the same things that any white dude up on the stage would be talking about.
I do totally apologize if we're pulling on that thread.
No, you're not. I don't think
Awesome.
you are. Okay.
I'm just making sure. Yeah.
Way to be a good ally, by the way. But no, I do not think that you are.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anything else, I hope it shows that we are trying to be better personally and on the show.
No, I think totally. I feel like our conversation has been more around, leadership topics in general. And, I happen to have the experience of, being the COO for Diana Initiative, being a woman in InfoSec for 20 years and those kinds of things. And, we kind of set when you guys asked me to come on, we talked about, some of the things we talk about. So no worries at all. I do not feel like you are going down that path.
And it's relevant to leadership, right?
Yes.
Like that. This is a very current topic to leadership.
It's not like you asked me on just to be like, so Jessica,
Very true.
what's it like to be a woman in InfoSec? I can sum it up for you. It fucking sucks.
This is just such an
End of podcast. Goodbye.
such an interestingly important part of leadership, though, because I feel like up until very recently, it's been one of the most not talked about aspects of leadership. And I mean, even today, like there's still not a lot of talk going on with it, but there's more. And like, we don't really talk about like how to bring in diversity of thought, and people as in general tend to fall into their safe space and look for somebody who thinks like they do and answers the way they would.
Yep.
And approaches things in the same way. And like, it kind of falls into one of my core tenets of leadership, actually. Like, one of my core tenets of leadership, it is my job to make my employees uncomfortable, not ungodly uncomfortable, but it's to know that line between the discomfort that causes growth without going too far into negative stress.
Yeah.
So if I ask them to do that, and that's my job for them, ultimately, as a leader, it's my job to make myself uncomfortable too, and challenge my own boundaries, and hire people who will help challenge my boundaries within reason and respectfully and all that, right? I'm not saying like hire somebody who's a rock star contrary piece of shit.
Right.
But hire somebody who thinks differently, because they're going to bring me new perspective. And like, it's my job to do that.
You just made a fancy version of no pain, no gain.
Kind of. I mean, I do think that people learn through a little bit of discomfort. Too much like the drop them off the deep end bullshit. No,
I don't.
But introducing strategic discomfort to make somebody
push
uncomfortable
them a little bit, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's like I do with my kids, right? Like, I don't make everything roses for them. Like, I push them a little bit.
I was just going to say that's a parenting principle.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a parenting principle. And there's a surprisingly huge number of correlations that come between being a parent and being a leader. Like, depending on what type you are. You also have
to be careful not to be too paternalistic.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
There's correlations in strategy more than there is practice.
Right.
I'll put it that way.
So one thing I think you can do to help with that diversity of thought on your teams is, when you're going through the interview process, is include people in the interview process that are not like you already within your organization, right? And if that means you have to pull in someone from another business unit that maybe they're not, security savvy, but they can give, some kind of scenario to see how the person thinks, right? And it may not be, I mean, let's be honest. When I put together, a team to interview people, I tend to go to the people I get along with best, right? And that's probably not the best approach. Sure. I probably need to ask for some of those folks that maybe there's a little bit of rub between us, right? And we're not, grabbing coffee together and those kinds of things. So I think if you create your interview panel and team with folks that are diverse in thought and looks, that will help inevitably bring people to the top that may not have otherwise. And I think the other thing is with diversity in your candidate pool. Now, this is something you have to work with HR on, and there are a lot of logistical problems with this, right? Like, I am a huge proponent of like blind resumes. Like, take out all the pronouns, take their name off the resume, take out anything. But so then it starts getting dicey, right? So if you were to do that to my resume, for example, then you probably wouldn't keep on there that I was the COO of the Diana Initiative, sure, which then negates a huge leadership opportunity I had, right? Where I led this organization for a year. And so, there's downsides to it as well. But if you can de-identify resumes as much as possible so that it looks, they look very similar between, a male and a female resume, I think that helps. And by doing things like removing names and pronouns, it helps. So are you guys aware of there was an experiment done with trying to get more diversity into like an orchestra or a symphony? And so they did these blind, they're not interviews. What are they called? Recitals or something? So
recitals, yeah.
Yeah. So they did these blind recitals where they would have the candidate come in and they'd be behind a screen. And they noticed that the people, when you could see the person, inevitably it was almost always a man that was chosen for the chair. And then they put people behind a screen so that you couldn't see if it was a man or a woman. But they were having very similar results. And so they're like, what was going on here? Well, then they figured out that you could still tell it was a woman in most cases because they would wear heels. And heels sound different when you're walking on like tile or a hard surface than like a man's dress shoe does, right? And so then they had the candidates remove their shoes when they were walking in, and they were behind the screen or whatever, and they started to have a much more balanced outcome on who would get the spot.
I want to do that and just bring a boombox. But
play the John Cusack
so-
song.
this is
Hell
really,
yeah.
This is a really interesting thought because I've actually heard two different trains of thought for this. So I've heard the one that you've done. I've actually worked with and been at a company that did like completely blind like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've heard the other train of thought of if you do that, and if you have two resumes that are ultimately equal, in experience wise, right? And one of them belongs to somebody who's underrepresented and one of them does not. So one will bring your team diversity and one is not, then you should probably, your preference should go towards the diverse candidate if you lack that. So like I've heard both kind of trains of thought for that. So I think it's, interesting to talk a little bit more about that or about the other way that I've heard.
Yeah, so
Favoring the diverse, so to speak.
yeah, I mean that is such a tricky topic, right?
Yeah, and I realize like this could be like a literal trigger topic for some people.
Yeah,
But I think it's a good thing to talk about a little bit anyway.
I do. I agree, and to be honest, I fight with myself internally on what is the better approach there, right? Because if you start, if you favor a candidate that is diverse from your team because they are diverse, they become the diversity candidate, right? And that's terrible, and it's not necessarily the intent, even if they are like super talented, right? But then you go back to the white supremacy kind of status quo where it's like, well, of course the white guy got it, or the white woman got it,
But if you favor the diverse candidate, then you get the other, well, of course it went to the diverse candidate.
Right.
Like that's starting to happen more and more often. That's why I think this is such a sensitive topic.
Yes. And I don't have an answer. I just know that I think about this kind of scenario a lot, actually.
As a hiring person, I do too.
As a hiring
to be
person,
honest.
right?
Like,
And so I wish we could be in a place like Jessica's perfect world where I don't know the characteristics. I know the facts.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, well, how do you interview someone like that, right? Because you got to be able to talk to the person, because otherwise you could just end up with someone who looks amazing on their resume and they're total.
And we all know
Jack-off,
that
right?
like the resume is
Right.
accurate truth to a person if you've been in
100%,
leadership.
yes.
Fraud.
Fraud.
Conclusion.
Yeah. So, I don't have an answer on that. I mean, I can't even begin to.
No, that's fair.
think.
I'll toss out one other interesting piece of advice that I got that I think has been really cool. There's a bunch of online services. The one that I'm familiar with is an online service called Textio. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Jess.
No.
Textio is a service that will take statements, specifically kind of made for like job recommendations, and will tell you if there's gender biased language in it, and will basically score you on a neutrality level. Does it lean more masculine or more feminine? And it's really, really genuinely interesting. I actually put all my job recs that I write through this service now.
Link it.
And I try to remove, and it might be a paid service specifically.
I'm okay with that.
But I will link it. But like it basically tries to remove gender biased language and genuinely biased language from things, and will kind of give you a score of where you sit and which words kind of lean which way. And like you could attract more women if you change this language and stuff like that, because they've done a lot of studies on language.
I love this, and let me tell you why. One, I think it's just awesome. But two, recently my VP gave me a direct assignment, because if you look around at all of his direct leaders, they're all middle-aged white men. And one of those guys called out in a leadership meeting. He said, hey, like our company is huge on diversity and equity and inclusion. And yet, if I look at all of your leadership, Mr. Vice President, it's all middle-aged white dudes. Like, what do we do about this?
Jessica, you can't see, but I'm giving you the double finger guns right now.
Yes. And so the vice president was like, you know what? Thank you for bringing it up. That is a very good point. I'm sure it was not easy for you to do. And I happened to be in the extended leadership team and was on the meeting for that reason, standing in for my boss that day. And I kind of spoke up, with some of my experiences from Diana Initiative and, just, being in the industry for 20 years. And he said, that's great. He goes, but, and yes, our company is huge on diversity and inclusion, but I need concrete things. Like I listen to these webinars and I read these articles and I have these conversations with people, but no one can tell me like, you should do X, Y, Z, and it will help. Which I think is a really good point, because I do think we talk about things kind of in general and don't get down to brass tacks sometimes and say, you know what, take names off of resumes or diversify your interview, panel, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this service, I think one thing I brought up was, we need to look at the way that we write our job descriptions, because when we say like, passionate, a lot of times that's code for working a ton of hours, and that's not necessarily conducive to, maybe, a woman in her 30s that is, having a family and has young kids and that kind of thing.
And they will highlight those warning words and tell you.
Right.
So like, the example that they have on the website is like, are you driven by? And they're like, you could attract more women to apply by using inspired by rather than driven by. So like they actually will help you kind of get a score, and it will score you on masculine to feminine tone.
I love it.
Is a brilliant service that I run all of my job recs through at this point.
Yes. So
to try to have the most neutral language I can.
That's excellent. And I was given the task, ironically, of coming up with 3 to 4 concrete things that our vice president could do to help try and increase the diversity of his leadership team. And I love, getting stretch assignments and recognition like that, but it also a little bit goes back to
the diverse candidate gets the task to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been racking my brain for like 3 or 4 concrete things, like, hey, do these things and, it should help. And I didn't know this service existed. And so I'm very excited about this because I did specifically bring up our job descriptions.
We will link this in the show description as well for anybody else who is interested in it. I can tell you as someone who uses the platform, I think it's phenomenal. I can't tell you the science behind whether or not it works, but I can tell you that when I put out a job posting, I actually get a relatively diverse candidate pool. Yeah. It still skews heavily towards white men, but I kind of expect that because of a lot of the things that we talked about earlier, specifically around like, if we're turning people away before they even apply. But at the same time, I think it's one thing that you can do that I think can approach and open the diversity of your candidate pool, which I think is important.
And I think it will end up being a huge thing to help, because it's been proven, like with written words as the first presentation, that there's often a lot of things that a person, when they're reading a document, that makes them feel one way or another without necessarily the conscious understanding of why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, language matters. Language is always
what?
Yeah.
What? Get out.
I mean, so I do want to say, like, I have appreciated, Jessica, with where we work, like their active approach with being intentional about diversity.
Yes.
And bringing that up. So that's something that's like, especially coming into this organization after having been an activist in the streets, like seeing that, like people making the intention to do that was like, okay, there is hope. Like,
yes.
it's not just bad stuff.
Well,
but,
and one thing that I noticed recently is our CEO, for some reason I came across like his org chart, and all of the business like area leaders that report directly to him that are like actual business areas, not like the CFO, that kind of thing, are all women. And I was like, this is amazing. This is so good. I love this.
I mean, I was just gonna say that we could keep talking about this forever, but
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
we
totally
gotta
could.
just let's move on to the thing that makes our podcast get its name with the detection portion. Now, with our guests, like we always have a portion of our show where we talk about some sort of actual application of a detection with some kind of attack or something in the life cycle or something out of attack, MITRE framework that our listeners can apply at work today or right at the day after they listen to the podcast. And we always put our guests in the hot seat for this. So here's your chance to drop some knowledge on people.
Knowledge bomb, huh? So
drop knowledge, not bombs.
Yeah, I love that. I
stole it from a friend of mine who prints that on shirts locally.
So I want to talk about domain generated algorithms. I think this is a really great way to find malware in your environment. And when I worked at a large healthcare institution a few years ago, I had a guy on my team that put together a script that hunted through DNS logs and identified a large number of DGAs. And so he had a lot of logic in there to look for like so many, numbers and letters together, greater than, 5 or 3 or some parameter, and then appended with, a top level domain, that kind of thing, probably a DGA. And he did things to also look for things that might be targeted to our organization. And so he would put variants of our organization name in there as well. But once we implemented his script for hunting through our DNS logs, we had all the SIM, all the fancy tools, all the network sensors, like all of that kind of stuff. We found so many potential malware infections and actual malware infections that we were able to mitigate and remediate that we weren't seeing in the noise of all of the rest of our logs before. And so it went a long way to really being impactful and doing, real things that made our network safer, right? And more secure by removing those malware infections. And so we just set this script up to run a couple times a day, and then we look through the results and kind of target those systems as one of our priorities to look into further. So I can give you the GitHub link for the script. I don't know if he's kept it up to date over the last couple of years, but it'll be an excellent starting point. You can modify it for your environment, but DNS log hunting in general is amazing. And,
Yes.
Going back to your question about if you could only have visibility into one thing, you'd have a pretty hard time convincing me that DNS isn't where it's at right now. DGA.
Oh, we're totally going to have this chat later.
I can't wait. So DGA hunting in DNS, I will send the link over to you so you guys can post it in the show notes.
That's
definitely.
fantastic.
DNF is a solid source of information. I'm interested to see where it's going to go in the future with as these browsers start to embrace DNS over HTTPS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that brings a lot of scary stuff associated with it, doesn't it?
Which we can put on another episode of Detections.
Yes, we can. With that being said, before you take us out, Excel, I just want to say, Jess, it has been fantastic having you, because I really didn't know anything about you before you came on the show. Like this is all Exile's doing. But
I did kind of keep it a little secret because I wanted to see how it was going to play out with just the bare minimum information.
Oh yeah, and I mean we went down a lot of rabbit holes. I think we talked about a lot of really interesting stuff. This will probably go down as one of my favorite episodes. It has been a fantastic conversation.
I have loved being on the show. And, if you guys ever need, a last minute guest or someone to fill a spot, keep me in mind. I'm happy to come in and, talk about anything.
Awesome. I mean, you definitely have a wonderful presentation for podcasting, which you never know when you have a guest come on, right?
Well, thank
It's
you.
always whether or not, like, is the mic going to sound okay? Are they going to stutter? Are they going to play into the jokes and the conversation? You never know. But genuinely, this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us.
The pleasure has been mine. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Of course. And I mean, just to kind of follow up on that, like I had the feeling and knew when we first started talking, when we both started at this organization around the same time, I was like, yep, this is going to work out. So I thank you. Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. This has been great.
Exile, buddy, take us out.
Yes. So thanks everyone again for joining us. We know that a lot of us are still stuck indoors, and we appreciate the time you take to listen to us. So as we continue to move forth, deal with the COVID situation, remember that we can go forth and find badness to kick it out of office.
We already did that.
I'm doing it again.
No.